Become a Leslie's Pro member, and with almost 1,000 locations conveniently located less than 3 miles from your service route, you can quickly get in and out and take care of your customers. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software platform. Listeners of the podcast can try Skimmer for free. Visit my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, and click on the Leslie's Pro and the Skimmer banners to learn more.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Best of the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to continue my conversation with Joe Laurano of Periodic Products. We're going to talk a little bit more about startups, and we're also going to discuss balancing the pool water and why this is so important, especially in metal treatment and in overall pool care. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. And I think See You Later promotes a Trifect system developed by the late Greg Garrett, and it's a 3-part system of doing a startup. You want to go over that real quick for the listeners. If the guys and gals out there who are doing startups want to implement this in their startups to make it a much better process for the customer, what's the three items that are in the Trifecta system?
Well, we've already talked about 2 of them. So the first one is actually the filters. So the first step of that is to filter the water going in. You want the best possible quality water going into that surface of that pool. Greg was all about the surface, and he did not want anything to touch his surface. So he was like, make sure the water going in is as good as it can possibly be. So the first step is to use the fill-fast filters to filter that water. The second step is Greg, about 3 years ago now, came up to me and said, is there any way we can take the plaster dust, which is basically calcium carbonate, and use that to assist in balancing the pool water, because hardness, after all, is calcium and carbonate's alkalinity. So we typically vacuum all this this kind of plaster dust out of the pool, and then we dump in, calcium chloride and sodium bicarb or sodium carbonate to balance the pool water. And he said, well, Joe, can you create something in the lab that'll get rid of this plaster dust problem and be able to balance the pool as we're doing it? And we did. So we actually created a product which is called Super Startup, and it has 3 different chemicals in it, and one of those chemicals actually breaks apart the plaster dust and converts it into calcium ions and carbonate ions. And as the pool is obviously, it's filled at this point in time, and the pumps are running, but what it's doing is actually using the plaster dust to actually help you balance that the water in the pool. The second thing it has in it is a very, very strong sequestering agent, which helps with any metals that may be there. Again, because we talked about the source water, filtering that source water, but now remember, your plaster was probably made on site, and hopefully they filtered the water that was used to make your plaster or to make your Pebble Tech, because if it hasn't, as that surface ages and dissolves, you'll get the metal into your pool water. So Greg said we need to put in a really good sequestering agent, and always had to be the best. So we have an agent in there that really lasts a long time. It's the same chemical that's in our own sequestering agent. And then the third chemical in there is actually it's a secondary buffer system that uses a chemical that's not a carbonate material, and it also provides a flock. And he did not want to flock the organics to the bottom of the pool, because again, it would touch his surface and potentially stain the surface of the pool. So he wanted to be suspended, so that when you ran the filters, it's the most efficient way to get the solids out. So we basically flock to suspend in very large particles that clear within about an hour and a half. So if you have this kind of ugly looking water, you dump in this Super Startup, and within about an hour and a half, you basically have crystal clear water. And in the meantime, you've helped to balance that pool water, and you'll notice that even though you do brush the surface, you won't see that plume of the plaster dust, because as the plaster dust is being formed, the chemicals are actually breaking it apart and helping you balance that pool water. So that's kind of the, if you will, second step. And the third step is to put a See You Later 4.0 into the pump basket to make sure that any metals that get in that water will be able to be taken out of that water before they will stain. So it's a 3-step process: filter, super startup, and then of course the See You Later 4.0.
So on your website, you have, I think your website's excellent, by the way. There's a lot of great information there.
Thank you.
And on there, you talk about balancing your pool. And I really like the chart you have there on your website as far as balancing the pool water. And why is it important? I guess I'm going a little bit back here. But why is it important to balance your pool in the first place to, as far as metal and staining go?
Well, the balanced water chart actually came from the from what is now PHTA website, and from basically the standards, the ANSI standards for the public pools. And the purpose of that is to make sure that the water is not aggressive. Water is a very aggressive material, so things will dissolve in water. So if the water doesn't have enough of something, it will actually dissolve that material to get it in. So in the absence of sufficient calcium hardness and carbonate alkalinity, the water will get it from the plaster surface. It'll actually dissolve the plaster surface until it's satisfied with enough calcium and with enough carbonate. If you have a vinyl liner pool and there isn't enough carbonate alkalinity, you'll actually take the plasticizer out of the vinyl liner, and you will see wrinkles in that liner because that water is aggressive. Years and years ago, when I was working in the hospital laboratory, we used to distill our water and put it in and basically store it on the roof. So you make a still, you distill it, put it on the roof, and we'd have stainless steel tubing going throughout the hospital lab, and we would just turn on a tap. Well, that water was so aggressive that it actually ate through the stainless steel, and we had to go to a regular system using plastic PVC piping and Teflon piping. So don't actually fool yourself. Water is very aggressive. So the purpose of balancing water is to make sure that your water is not aggressive and not corrosive, and that keeps your equipment in check. It also is important for alkalinity because alkalinity is actually buffering the water, and it's important that you maintain the pH between 7.2 and 7.8, and that's for two things. One, it's for chlorine, so that chlorine can be active in terms of doing what it needs to do. But then the second thing is that if the pH goes below 7 and you have any metal present, it'll start to corrode and actually dissolve the metal. So people that have gas-fired water heaters, if they let that pH go down below 7, they'll often have a very expensive repair on their hands, having to replace that heater core in that pool heater. So the one thing alkalinity does, carbonate alkalinity, is it actually allows you to buffer that pH so that small changes of adding your chlorine or your acid or even sitting out in the air will not cause drastic changes in your pH. So it's pH, alkalinity, hardness, and then of course TDS and temperature are the main factors when we talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome to have that information available to whoever wants to go to your website and see that. And I think getting educated on balancing your pool is, of course, the primary, and any pool service professional should know what a balanced pool water looks like. The LSI chart and all of that is important. I think another question I get is when should I drain the customer's pool? When is this metal treatment going to work? How do I know the balancing point? Like, is it better to drain this customer's plaster or PebbleTech pool and acid wash it? Or can the See You Later products remove the metals without me draining the pool? Is there a way to tell when you're at that point?
Well, there's really, yes, there is, and there's a couple of hints that I'll put in there. So according to the according to the codes, when your TDS, which is the amount of material dissolved in your water, all right, solids dissolved in that water, when it's 1500 ppm over where you started. So that's after you balance that water, and if it's a salt system, when you put the salt in that pool. So you take a TDS reading, and then when that gets 1500 ppm above that reading, that tells you you need to dump out some of that pool water. It's that pool has got other stuff in it. It's not an absolute marker. It's what we call a surrogate marker, because in addition to all the ions and other stuff that's dissolved in there, you'll also have organic byproducts from the chlorine disinfection in there. And it's getting old water, and it's kind of ugly looking water. It may look clear, but we call it ugly water. So we tell people to dump out some of that water to lower the TDS. So basically, that's really the absolute number, and it's in the public building. I should say it's public pool codes that it's 1500 ppm, but I like to apply that to the residential pools, because after all, the codes don't know, or I say the water doesn't know whether it's in a residential or a public pool. So if the standard's good enough for the public pool, we should look at those as really good targets for the residential pool. And then to kind of address your question about, well, what do I do? Do I drain the pool, or do I acid wash it? When you acid wash it, what you're doing is you're actually dissolving the surface of that pool. So you make it thinner than it actually was when it's on, and you'll make it rougher. So I would suggest doing two things. One, try the no stain treatment first, right? Before you start washing that with muriatic acid, try while the pool is filled, putting in ascorbic and citric. If you're intent on dumping out the pool water, what you've done is you've taken the stains and you've dissolved the metals and you put them in the water. You dump the water, you dump away the metals, right? So you can actually achieve the results of that acid wash potentially without having to harm the surface of the pool. So for the few dollars it would take you to do a no drain stain removal treatment, if you're intent on dumping that water out, go ahead and do that. That way you may be able to not have to acid wash that pool, which is kind of like, if you will, the last resort. And then, what's going to determine whether or not you dump the pool out is what else is in there. If there's a lot of stabilizer in that pool, there's a lot of cyanuric acid in that pool, there's no good way to get it out. So if it's causing you problems, chances are your TDS is well over 1500 ppm over what you started. You probably need to dump out some of that water. Caution the listeners, and obviously the professionals know this. You don't want to dump all the water out of your pool, because that water could be holding that pool in the ground. And if you dump out all the water and all that weight, you may pop your pool out of the ground, which is a very expensive outcome. You don't want to. You don't want to do that. So again, make sure that you dump out only a small portion of the water at a time, fill back with fresh water, and then treat the pool that way. So definitely, if you're unsure, hire a professional who knows what they're doing, or call an expert in, because there are people that specialize in this.
And I think we should caution them too about draining a vinyl or fiberglass pool all the way down too, because that can cause lots of problems with the liner and with the fiberglass pool. If there's a drop in fiberglass pool, that could cause some problems with the walls collapsing in there too. So wouldn't recommend draining all those down either. And I noticed, just real quick, it's something I just thought about. The ascorbic acid treatment seems to work really well on the vinyl and fiberglass pool. Is there a reason why the ascorbic acid treatment works so well on those surface types?
Yes, and it's really a chemical reason. The stain tends to get into the plaster surface. There are pores in that surface, so the metals kind of get into that pore, and because you may have some scaling that goes on, you actually calcify over it. So you have a much more imperfect surface, which is a better hiding place for the metal. So it's harder for the chemicals to get in, and it's obviously harder to treat an older stain on a plaster surface because of the calcification that happens. When you deal with a polymer surface, which is an organic polymer, be it fiberglass or with a vinyl liner, it's a very, very smooth surface that doesn't have pockets. So it's very easy to remove remove stains from those surfaces, easier than from a plaster surface. So we use the Sorbic, which is kind of like the weakest acid. Then we go with citric, that's a little stronger. If those don't work, we go with oxalic acid, which again is not a food product. It's a one that you have to be very careful with. You have to wear gloves and a goggle. Be really careful with that material. But and then those are all done with the water in the pool, and then we go with a very strong acid, muriatic acid or hydrochloric acid, to actually do an acid wash treatment of the pool. So we kind of go up in our acid strengths to remove those stains. But I always tell people, if you can get it off with a weaker acid like a Sorbic or citric, it helps to preserve the surface of that pool.
Yeah, I think that's an important point there. So, in wrapping this up, I think the Sealator products are highly effective. I've tested them. I know they work in real world experience out there. I've also talked to experts in the field about them when I first started using them to say, hey, this product, is it legitimate? And everyone I've talked to, from Taylor to, Bob Lowry, have confirmed that this product works. And I think one way that you set your company up apart from others is that you're not just a storefront selling your products, but you're also educating the pool professional and the homeowner on how to use the product, when to use the product, how to identify the stains. And so you're not just like selling a product and giving to somebody and say, hope it works for you. You're actually educating the people who are using your product so that it is going to have the best results out there with the product. So I think the website that you've mentioned is a great resource for the pool pro and the homeowner. Regardless if they get the product or not, they have that information available. And I think that's one thing that's unique about Sealator is that you're not just a storefront selling products like other websites.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, we went at a different way. I do a lot of education in the industry. I give a lot of seminars. I serve on a lot of committees, and it's important to I can solve the problem, but if I can teach you how to solve the problems, then you're out there and you're doing much, much more than I could individually. So we set the company up, at least the pool aspect website, to really educate the pool service professional and the customer, the homeowner, the pool owner, as to how to deal with these issues and the importance of balanced water and metal staining and other things, and importance of pool standards and codes, and why it's important to hire the professionals to do this.
I think the easiest way to see their products and to, of course, get in contact with them and to take their STAR certified program is to go to the Sealator website, which is sealator.com. That's CULAOTR. And over there, you're going to find all the information you're going to need to further your knowledge on metal stain identification and metal stain removal. And if you're looking for other podcasts that I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. Here, you just click on the podcast icon on the banner, and there'll be 1,500 episodes that you can listen to at your leisure. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app.